I recently started playing some CS2 again, and the timing was absolutely perfect when I got to check out the ZywOo Gen 2. If you already own one and you want to know if it's worth the upgrade, or if you still don't know what the shape is actually like, you're definitely going to have to stick around for this one because it's more interesting than you'd think it is. Getting right into the unboxing experience, here is what the new receiver looks like. It's USB-C on the back end. And then here towards the front, you have two LED indicators and also two mechanical micro switches. We'll get into the functionalities later in the video, and I'll also do a sound test for you guys. You also get this pack with your 5.8 gram weight bar that is now no longer installed by default. There are also instructions inside of the packaging on how to change it as well. You'll have to use these two screws included, and definitely make sure to follow the instructions of their own video. You also get the same old sticker, collector's card, paperwork, and a angled USB-A to USB-C cable that is quite stiff, so I wouldn't recommend using this with your mouse plugged in. Getting into the differences between the Gen 1 and the Gen 2, obviously, you're gonna get the new receiver compared to the old default Pulsar one, but you're also now gonna get Pulsar's own optical switches inside of it, which is a custom switch based on the FE optical switches. It now also supports 20K FPS scanning, and you can toggle that inside of the software, but you can also bind it to your receiver, which I will show you how to do that later in the video as well. The weight of the Mini has gone from 55 grams to 59 grams, and on the medium it went from 59 to 62 grams. This is because they have improved the rigidity of the internal structure and especially the thickness of the top shell. And as you can see, the included weight bar no longer comes installed inside of the mouse, so you will receive your mouse at a lower weight. And if you want those additional 5.8 grams, you'll have to install it inside of your mouse. And when you do that now, there is no longer as big of a risk of breaking your mouse because the ribbon cable inside of it has been greatly lengthened so that you don't accidentally just yank off the top shell and break your mouse instantly. But still, if you want to put in the weight bar of the mouse, definitely follow Pulsar's own tutorial, and I'll link it down in the description below. But yeah, these are all the changes that have been made. My honest recommendation is if you already own a Gen 1 and you do not have any issues with it, especially in terms of build quality, there's absolutely no reason to get this. But if you've never tried or owned a ZywOo mouse, well, now's your chance. In terms of the build quality, I really have absolutely nothing to complain about. If you squeeze the shell like crazy, you can get a bit of flex out of it, but it's nowhere near as flexy as any of the other lightweight gaming mice that are releasing these days. It's also definitely not as tanky as a Vaxi or Zowie mouse, but in terms of the overall build quality, I really do not have any complaints. I don't have any switch grinding, I don't have any button wobbling, there's no excessive side-to-side movement. Overall, the tolerances are just great, and yeah, I can't really complain about anything major. There's only one design decision that I personally do not understand, and that is over on the medium version of the mouse. As you can see, it has this huge lip towards the rear. So the way that I actually use my mouse, when I place the back of my palm on the mouse and I actually just swipe my mouse around, I can tilt it incredibly easy. So some people might view this as an actual benefit because they can reposition their mouse a lot easier by just tilting it slightly rearwards. But for me personally, it did mess me up quite a bit. I cannot personally recall ever experiencing anything similar to this, but yeah, it's definitely a bit annoying for me personally. In terms of the shape and comparisons, I find it incredibly difficult to compare these shapes to other mice. Pretty much any other ergonomic mouse that I grab is just so much more mellow in terms of its rear hump, and it's overall just a lot more natural or comfortable. I would never say that this mouse is uncomfortable, but it is very specific in terms of its shape. When comparing the medium version to the DeathAdder V4 Pro, for example, there is pretty much no similarity between these two mice, except for the fact that they're both ergonomic. The ZywOo has a pretty wide butt here towards the rear with a lot of claw support, and then it goes out towards the front with absolutely no flare on the right side, which is very nice. It is also definitely a proper ergo mouse with a lot of tilt, and here it is compared to the Vaxi E1, which is very similar to the EC2 from Zowie. And as you can see, it definitely matches the size of an E1 a lot better, but it's still very different. The best comparison that I can give you guys is the medium version of the ZywOo mouse compared to the Lamsu Thorn. Because the Lamsu Thorn is also a very unique claw-shaped ergo mouse because it has this support here towards the left side of the rear hump. When I grip the Thorn, the first thing that I can feel personally is the claw support down here on the left meat of my palm over here. And same goes for the ZywOo. There's definitely a lot of support here on the left side, but also on the right side for that pincer claw grip. The button height is also very similar, and as you can see, the tilt of the mouse is also quite similar. And when you look at these two mice from beneath, you can see that the Thorn is definitely a bit slimmer towards the front with also a bit more of a narrow grip width. And then towards the rear, the ZywOo definitely has a bit of a wider butt with a bit more support. And in terms of the Mini, well, it's pretty much a Lamsu Thorn Mini. This shape absolutely slaps, and we'll get more down to detail on how much I actually enjoyed it later in the video. But in terms of the overall size, you can definitely compare it to something like the X-Lite Mini. But keep in mind, the shape itself is definitely very different. The X-Lite feels incredibly mellow and goes all the way down to your mousepad over here. And over here on the ZywOo, you can see that it is much more of a rear hump. And you can just feel so much more support over on it. In terms of hand sizes, my hands are 19 by 10 centimeters, and I highly prefer the mini version, but that is just because I like smaller mice that are more maneuverable. Here is what my grip looks like with the mini. I definitely have a bit of space left towards the front. I also have some space left on the mouse buttons, but I'm definitely closing in on the end of them. And my thumb goes slightly in front of the side buttons and also definitely in front of the sensor, which we're going to talk about later as well. If you play an aggressive claw grip like me, I can definitely recommend this mouse for 19 by 10 centimeters or slightly above and also definitely below. But if you play a relaxed claw grip, I would only recommend this for 18 centimeter hands and below. I say the same for palm grippers as well, and over on the medium version, you can comfortably use this with an aggressive claw with something like 20 by 11 centimeter hands, maybe even 21 centimeter long hands, but for a relaxed claw grip, I would only recommend it for around 20 centimeters. Obviously, you can also use it with shorter hands, but in terms of a palm grip, I'd say about the same, maybe like 19 or 20 centimeters and below. I'm sorry if my comparisons aren't good enough, but it is just pretty unique. In terms of the coating on these mice, it is absolutely goated. It is definitely more of a rubbery coating, and even if my hands are a bit cold, I can still easily grip these, and I have never felt the need for grip tape personally. You might not think the same as me if your hands are super sweaty, so please do be aware of that. The skates are fine. They're not super fast, but they're also not super slow. They're just your average 100% PTFE opaque skates. And they also do have plastic ridges around the skates, which I am not a fan of. So if you play on very soft mouse pads, you can feel the edges drag on your mouse. Even on this Artisan Zero Soft, if I press my mouse into the pad, I can easily feel this ridge scraping my mouse pad, so please be aware of that. But this only happens if you put a lot of pressure into your mouse pad. Before we talk about the buttons, I do quickly want to touch on weight and also the weight balancing, because holy shit, these mice are so perfectly balanced. I thought they were like 5 to 6 grams lighter. Coming from a super front heavy Logitech Super Strike over to these mice got me feeling like this meme. I always knew that perfectly weight balanced mice are just going to feel better because the weight distribution is so good on all axi, not only X and Y, but also on the C axis. But because of this awesome weight distribution, these mice just do not feel as heavy as they actually are. They genuinely feel 5 grams lighter than what it says on the box. If I grip the actual center of the mouse, it just balances perfectly. And same goes for the C axis, as I said as well, it just feels perfectly weight distributed in height as well. In terms of the buttons, the implementations for the Pulsar optical, which I normally am not a huge fan of, is actually pretty good. There is little to no pre-travel, and there is a bit of post-travel to bounce right back at you crazy style in order to spam your clicks a bit better. The side buttons are nice and crisp, they're not too heavy and they're also not too light, and the tolerances are great. There's little pre-travel, a bit of post-travel, and they're pretty much exactly how you want your side buttons to be. The scroll is nice and spammable, it is also not too tactile and it is not too light, and the scroll click is like a 5 out of 10 in terms of how hard it is to use. I also want to mention that there is a customizable DPI button here underneath the mouse, and the on and off switch is a bit weird because it is not textured and you kind of have to press into the shell in order to turn it on or off, or you just use your fingernail. And as always, here's the sound test for you guys. Getting into the sensor position of the medium version of the mouse, you can see that it perfectly aligns with the center of the side buttons, and the way that I personally grip the mouse and place my thumb at, it also aligns with it perfectly fine. Here on the mini version, you can also see that it perfectly aligns with the center of the side buttons, but the way that I would grip this thing with my 19 by 10 centimeter hands, it definitely ends up above the sensor. I did feel my sensitivity being a bit slower on the x-axis because of this, but I didn't compensate with any DPI changes and I just adapted, and it felt absolutely fine to me personally. In terms of battery life, if you do not use the competition mode with 20k FPS scanning, it is absolutely fine. You can definitely use it on like 1 to 2k polling for an entire week without it, but as soon as you turn on that turbo mode, your battery goes down like crazy. So if you really want that sweet 20k FPS scanning and you played something like 2 or 4k polling for an entire day, you're gonna have to charge your mouse after that. I would say the battery life comes in at around 10 to 12 hours on the turbo mode. So yeah, not the best, but also keep in mind that the turbo mode is pretty unhinged. As always, I'll link the WebDriver down in the description for you guys below. On the start page, you can see all of your current settings, but what I would recommend you to do is go into the setting and also check if you have a firmware update available. At the time of recording this video, the beta version of the new firmware is not available for this mouse so far, but getting into the general settings over in the performance tab, here you can change your DPI stages. You can even change the color of your profile if you want to do that, but there is no XY split for DPI. Pulsar, please fix. You can set your polling rate all the way up to 8k Hz. I personally use 2k on all of my mice. You can turn the turbo mode on and off down here in the bottom right section. For the debounce time on this mouse, because it's the Gen 2 with the optical switches, I would recommend setting it to 0 milliseconds. The lift-off distance, in my opinion, feels pretty low. So depending on what type of mouse pad you use, especially on something very tightly knit, like an Artisan Raiden for example, I did have a bit of tracking issues even on the 2mm setting. I would love to see Pulsar fixing this in a firmware update because it is calibrated quite low compared to pretty much any other mouse that I have with me. But if you don't use something like an Artisan Raiden or even faster, you should be fine. You can also do sensor rotation down here, and if you want to know how that works and how it can benefit from it, definitely check down the link in the description below. And of course, you also have profiles for all your different types of settings. You can also do macros over here in the macro tab, and over in the power and dongle settings is where it actually gets interesting now. Here you can see your receiver and what you currently have the options set to, and you can only change the left side of the receiver with the circular button. I always set this to turbo mode so that I can see whether it's on or off, so that I can save on battery when I'm not in game, and then go balls to the walls with 20k FPS scanning once I hit Counter-Strike. But if you don't want to use this receiver and you simply want to turn the lights off, you can do that as well over here on the right side. In terms of the low power mode, I would definitely set this to 0% so that you always have the best performance possible. And once you get down to 15% battery life, your receiver will flash in red. Before I get into the final conclusion of this mouse, I do want to talk about pricing, because here in Europe, it's a whopping 160 euros. If you're in the US, it comes in at around 140 US dollars. And whether that's good value or not is for you to decide. But in my personal opinion, 160 euros is too much. Yes, the mouse is absolutely solid, but in terms of their OEM firmware solution that they have, and the new fixed firmware update not being out for the ZywOo yet, combined with the ridges around the skates that scrape on softer pads, and also the skate material still being opaque and not translucent, and simply not feeling as great as certain other mice these days, I really would love to see Pulsar either doing a bit better or just lowering their price tag. But to my final conclusion, who is this mouse for and should you buy it? If you already have a Gen 1, please don't buy this unless you are incredibly schizo and want 20k FPS scanning, or if you have some type of issue with your Gen 1 mouse that your mouse either creaks or just doesn't feel as good anymore. But if you have never tried or used this mouse and the shape and the overall size of either the mini or the medium version looks attractive to you after watching my chapter about that, I can highly recommend these mice for the weight balancing and also the shape alone. The weight balancing really does make a big difference in my opinion, and it feels absolutely amazing in game. I also just absolutely adore the mini version because it kind of reminds me of a Lamsu Thorn, but just a lot smaller. And overall, it's just definitely a unique shape. I don't understand the huge overhang here on the rear because my mouse definitely does tilt on accident and just stops tracking in game because of that. But the Mini I just really enjoy using, and I will definitely keep it forever, maybe sand the base and put on some aftermarket skates. The new receiver I actually do enjoy using a lot. It is definitely useful, and I love that I can just turn on and off the turbo mode here with this button. But that's really all I have to say about this thing. It is nothing crazy, it's just a unique shape with great build quality and very good weight distribution. And yeah, that's really about it. It's definitely a mouse. If you've at all been enjoying this video, definitely make sure to hit the subscribe button and the notification bell right next to it so that I get notified for any upcoming reviews, because we're also going to talk about the Pulsar ES FS1 pretty soon. And after that, we might have something even more interesting. Anyway, that's about it for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed it and see you guys pretty soon. Peace out.